I didn't find out my wife was cheating through a hidden camera. I didn't hire a private investigator, and I didn't use some secret GPS tracker on her car. I found out because she was so incredibly brazen, so deeply arrogant, and so drunk on her own ego, that she practically shoved it right in my face. If you're listening to this, I need you to understand something about betrayal. The movies get it wrong. It doesn't always happen in the shadows. Sometimes, the most devastating betrayals happen right in your own living room, under the bright lights, while you are serving them dinner. My name is Thomas. I'm 36 years old. I work as an estimator for a construction company. I wear work boots, I get dirt under my fingernails, and I come home smelling like sawdust and exhaust. I've always been a simple, straightforward guy. I believe in working hard, paying your bills, and fiercely loving the people you commit to. For 8 years, the person I committed to was my wife, Chloe. Chloe was a corporate event planner. She was always put together. Designer heels, perfect hair, smelling like expensive perfume. We were a classic case of opposites attract. I grounded her, and she brought a spark of glamour into my otherwise quiet life. I paid the mortgage on our beautiful suburban home, and I gave her the freedom to pursue her career without worrying about the bills. I thought we were an unbreakable team. But about 2 years ago, Chloe got a new boss. His name was Julian. Julian was everything I wasn't. He was a slick, smooth-talking executive with a tailored suit, a leased Porsche, and teeth that looked like they cost more than my truck. It started innocently enough. At least, that's what I told myself. Chloe would come home and talk about him nonstop. Julian said this. Julian thinks we should change our marketing strategy. Julian took the team out for sushi. Then, the boundaries started to blur. Julian started texting her after hours. First at 7 in the evening, then at 9, then at 11. When I asked her about it, she would roll her eyes and let out this dramatic sigh. "Tom, please," she would say, her voice dripping with condescension. "He's my boss. We're launching a massive campaign. I can't exactly ignore the director of operations because my husband is feeling a little clingy." Clingy. The word stung. It was designed to sting. The brazenness escalated when she actually invited him to our house. We were hosting a summer barbecue for some friends, and Julian just showed up. Chloe didn't even ask me. She just told me he was coming. I will never forget standing at my own grill, flipping burgers, while Julian sat on my patio furniture, drinking my expensive scotch. Chloe sat next to him, not across from him, right next to him. Their shoulders were practically touching. She laughed at every unfunny joke he made. She leaned in when he spoke. She touched his forearm when she handed him a napkin. I stood there, the smoke from the grill burning my eyes, feeling a sick, heavy knot forming in the pit of my stomach. My gut was screaming at me. Every instinct I had as a man was setting off alarm bells. But when everybody left and I finally brought it up while we were cleaning the kitchen, the real psychological torture began. "Are you out of your mind?" Chloe snapped. She threw a wet dish towel into the sink, the sound echoing sharply in the quiet kitchen. "You're embarrassing yourself, Tom. Seriously." "I'm not blind, Chloe." I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. "I saw the way you looked at him. I saw how you couldn't keep your hands off his arm. It's disrespectful to me, and it's disrespectful to our marriage." She turned around, her eyes cold and hard. "He is my boss. He is mentoring me for a vice president position, and you are throwing a jealous tantrum over a napkin? You need to grow up. Your insecurities are suffocating me." That is how they destroy you. They don't just cheat on you. They make you believe you are losing your mind. For the next 6 months, I lived in a state of constant, sickening anxiety. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The brazenness of her behavior only intensified. She stopped hiding her phone because she changed the passcode. When I asked why, she claimed it was a new corporate security protocol. She started buying new clothes, expensive, revealing dresses, lingerie that I never got to see her wear. She started going to the gym at 6 in the morning, leaving the house smelling like fresh perfume instead of sweat. Every time I gathered the courage to question her, the arguments became more vicious. She would cry. She would call me controlling. She would threaten to leave if I didn't stop smothering her. She manipulated me so perfectly that I actually started seeing a therapist because I thought I had a paranoia disorder. I spent hundreds of dollars sitting on a leather couch, crying to a professional, trying to figure out how to be a better, less jealous husband. Meanwhile, my wife was sleeping with her boss. The audacity of it still takes my breath away. She didn't just cheat. She weaponized my love for her to buy herself more time and space to do it. She made me feel like a monster for daring to suspect her of being a monster. They became careless. Or maybe they just didn't care at all anymore. One evening, I found a receipt for a luxury hotel downtown crumpled up in the pocket of her winter coat while I was putting it in the closet. The date on the receipt was a Tuesday when she told me she was working late on a budget report. I stared at that little piece of thermal paper for a long time. My heart wasn't racing. I didn't cry. Instead, a terrifying, absolute coldness washed over my entire body. The illusion was dead. The paranoia was gone. I wasn't crazy. I was right. But I didn't confront her right then. If I waved a receipt in her face, she would just invent another lie. She would say the company booked it for a client. She would spin another web, and I would be stuck in the middle of it. I didn't want an argument. I wanted the undeniable, ugly truth. And I was going to get it. I didn't have to wait long. Her arrogance was her downfall. 2 weeks later, I was scheduled to attend a regional construction expo in Chicago. It was a 3-day trip, a Thursday through Saturday. Chloe was practically giddy as she helped me pack my suitcase. She kissed me at the door, told me she loved me, and told me to have a safe flight. I drove to the airport. I went through security. I sat at my gate, but as I sat there looking out at the tarmac, a massive, severe weather system rolled in. Black clouds, lightning, sirens. Every flight out of the regional airport was grounded. After 3 hours of waiting, the airline officially canceled all outbound flights until the next morning. Most guys would have called their wives immediately, but that cold, quiet voice in my head told me to keep my phone in my pocket. I rented a car because my truck was parked in long-term parking and I didn't want to deal with the shuttle, and I drove the 45 minutes back to my house. The rain was coming down in sheets. The windshield wipers were violently slapping back and forth. It was 9:30 p.m. when I turned onto my street. As I approached my driveway, I turned off the headlights. I let the rental car roll slowly to a stop by the curb. Sitting right there in my driveway, gleaming under the street lamp, was Julian's black Porsche. My breath caught in my throat. I sat in the dark car, listening to the rain hammer against the roof. This was it. This was the moment my life would permanently split into a before and an after. I didn't grab a weapon. I didn't rush the door. I walked slowly up the driveway, letting the freezing rain soak through my jacket. I unlocked the front door as quietly as I could. The house was warm. Music was playing softly from the living room sound system, some smooth jazz playlist. The smell of garlic, expensive steak, and my favorite red wine filled the air. I walked down the hallway. My wet boots squeaked slightly on the hardwood, but they didn't hear me. I stopped in the archway of the kitchen. They were right there. They weren't hiding in a dark bedroom. They were standing at my kitchen island, the island I built with my own hands. Julian was wearing my gray sweatpants. My sweatpants. He didn't have a shirt on. Chloe was wearing one of my old flannel button-downs, unbuttoned down to her stomach. They were drinking wine. They were laughing. Julian had his hands resting completely on her lower back, pulling her against him. They were playing house. In my house. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there, dripping wet, and cleared my throat. Evening. Chloe whipped her head around. The wine glass in her hand slipped from her fingers and shattered perfectly on the tile floor. Red wine splashed across her bare legs. Julian stumbled backward, his eyes wide, looking like a deer caught in the headlights. I expected panic. I expected her to drop to her knees, to sob, to beg for forgiveness, to scream that it was a mistake, but that's when I saw the true face of the woman I married. That's when the absolute, brazen reality of her character showed itself. Chloe looked at the broken glass. She looked at Julian. And then, she looked at me. The shock on her face vanished, replaced by an expression of pure, cold annoyance. She let out a heavy sigh. She actually rolled her eyes. "Well," Chloe said, her voice completely flat, "I guess we're doing this now. Are you happy, Tom? You finally got what you were looking for." I stared at her, feeling a literal physical shockwave hit my chest. She wasn't sorry. She was irritated that I had ruined her weekend plans. Julian finally found his voice. He puffed out his chest, trying to look authoritative while standing barefoot in another man's sweatpants. "Tom, listen, let's just all be adults here, okay? Nobody wanted you to find out like this." "Take my pants off," I said. My voice didn't even sound like my own. It sounded hollow, demonic. "Excuse me?" Julian stammered. "Take my pants off." I stepped fully into the kitchen. "You have exactly 60 seconds to get out of my clothes, put your own clothes on, and get the hell out of my house before I drag you out onto the lawn by your teeth." Julian looked at Chloe for help, but then he looked at my face. I am a builder. I work with my hands all day. Julian sat behind a desk. He did the math quickly. He scurried toward the guest bathroom where his clothes were evidently discarded. I was left alone in the kitchen with my wife. "You're acting like a psychopath, Tom," she said, crossing her arms. She didn't even try to button the flannel shirt. She was completely unashamed. "A psychopath?" I let out a dry, broken laugh. "You're having an affair in our kitchen. You have another man wearing my clothes, and I'm the psychopath?" "It's over, Tom," she said coldly. She leaned against the counter, picking up a towel to dab at the spilled wine on her leg. "It's been over for a long time. You're just too boring to realize it. You work, you come home, you watch TV, you sleep. Julian makes me feel alive. He actually has ambition. I'm sorry it hurts your feelings, but I'm not going to apologize for wanting more out of my life." The sheer disrespect. The absolute, unadulterated cruelty. She didn't just break my heart. She took it out, threw it on the floor, and stomped on it while looking me dead in the eyes. 8 years of devotion. 8 years of building a life together, supporting her dreams, comforting her when she cried. All reduced to her calling me boring because I didn't drive a sports car. Julian rushed out of the hallway, holding his shoes. He practically ran to the front door. "I'll call you tomorrow, Chloe," he mumbled, refusing to make eye contact with me as he slipped out into the rain. The door slammed shut. "Pack a bag," I told her. The anger was gone. There was just a vast, empty wasteland inside me. "It's my house too, Tom," she sneered. "I'm not going anywhere tonight." "If you are not out of this house in 10 minutes, I said, my voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, "I will call the police. I will tell them you are trespassing and that I feel threatened. I don't care what lies I have to tell. Pack a bag, now." She saw the look in my eyes. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She stomped up the stairs. She threw some clothes into a duffel bag, walked back down, and stopped at the front door. She looked back at me one last time, her face twisted in contempt. "You're going to lose everything in the divorce, you know," she spat. "I'm taking half of everything." "Get out," I said. She walked out into the storm. I walked over to the front door, locked the deadbolt, and slid the chain into place. I stood in the dark foyer for a long time, listening to the rain, before I finally collapsed against the wall and wept until I couldn't breathe. She thought she was untouchable. She thought because she was the smart, corporate high flyer, she could walk all over the simple construction guy. She was wrong. The arrogance that allowed her to cheat so brazenly was the exact same arrogance that destroyed her life. The next morning, I didn't call her. I called a lawyer, the most ruthless, cold-blooded divorce attorney in the county. Because Chloe was so confident I wouldn't do anything, she was incredibly sloppy. Remember how she claimed her hotel was paid for by a client? It wasn't. I pulled our joint credit card statements. She had used our marital funds to pay for the hotels, the expensive dinners, and even gifts for Julian. In my state, the dissipation of marital assets for the purpose of an affair is a massive legal offense. But I didn't stop there. I remembered that Julian was her boss. I remembered her bragging about the corporate policies at her Fortune 500 company. I took the hotel receipts, the text message logs from our joint phone bill, and a signed affidavit of what I witnessed in my kitchen. I put it all into a neat, professional envelope, and I mailed it directly to the head of human resources at her company, along with a polite letter explaining the abuse of power and company funds. It took exactly 4 days for the bomb to drop. Chloe and Julian were both called into HR. Because Julian was her direct superior, the relationship was a massive liability. Furthermore, using company time to carry out the affair violated their contracts. They were both fired, terminated immediately, with cause. Chloe lost her 6-figure salary. Julian lost his unvested stock options and his pristine corporate reputation. When the divorce proceedings finally hit the courtroom, Chloe had no income, and she had a documented history of using our joint money to fund her infidelity. The judge tore her to shreds. I kept the house, I kept my truck, I kept my retirement fund. She walked away with a mountain of legal debt and her bags of expensive clothes. It has been 3 years since that night in the storm. I'm not going to pretend I healed overnight. The trauma of being gaslit by the person you love the most leaves deep, jagged scars. For a long time, I couldn't look at another woman without wondering if she was capable of lying right to my face. I had to go back to therapy, real therapy this time, to rebuild the self-esteem my ex-wife had systematically dismantled. But slowly, the light came back. I sold that house. I used the equity to buy a cabin out near the lake. A quiet place. A peaceful place. I got promoted at work. I bought a dog. I started spending my weekends fishing, hiking, and surrounding myself with friends who actually respected me. Last I heard through the grapevine, Julian dumped Chloe about 3 months after they got fired. Shocking, right? A relationship built on lies and stolen time didn't survive in the harsh light of the real world. She is currently working a mid-level retail job, living in a tiny apartment on the other side of town. I don't hate her anymore. Hate takes too much energy. I just feel nothing for her. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this. Never let anyone convince you that your boundaries are just insecurities. Never let anyone mock your intuition. If your gut is telling you that something is wrong, that someone is disrespecting your relationship, listen to it. Don't be afraid to demand respect. Don't be afraid to walk away from someone who treats your devotion like a weakness. The pain of walking away is agonizing. It feels like you are dying. But I promise you, you won't die. You will walk through the fire, and on the other side, you will find a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, and completely unbreakable. Take care of yourselves, and trust your gut.